Hello everyone, welcome to 3ddesignacademy.com. In this lesson, we will continue with part 2 of the Lamborghini Aventador project. So in the previous lesson, we spent some time setting up the orthographic drawings. So now I think it is time to actually start the modeling process. So like all the other cars, we are going to start with the wheel flat. So in order to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go to top view like this. And I'm going to create a curve like this, edit point curve. I'm going to change the curve degree to 2. And I'm just going to strike a curve like this. And I'm going to make sure that it's around the center so that it's somewhat symmetrical. Now, this isn't super critical, but I prefer to do this, do it like this so that it's symmetrical about the wheel. Okay, so I think that looks pretty good. Now, the only thing about this is it's a little, well, this isn't exactly a traditional looking wheel flat, just because of the Lamborghini language. So I'm going to go ahead and put the curve like that, and I'm going to scale it up a little bit, and I'm just going to strike another curve like this, and I'm going to make a rail. So for this one, I'm going to say 1 and 1, and it's going to be set to parallel like this. And from the front view, I'm just going to make sure, actually, because we're doing the working on the front, I'm going to turn the rear canvas off like that. And let's go to the front. Okay, so from the top view, there is probably a little bit of crown. Now, this orthographic drawing isn't exactly high resolution, but this is all we got. So let's work with it. So I'm just going to grab both curves, and I gave it a little bit crown over here, and I'm just going to pull it up like this. And let's go to the side view. I think side view looks good. And I'm just going to go to the front view like that. And what I'm going to do is, because usually wheel flats have a little bit of, I guess, taper towards the bottom, so it tucks in a little bit. So I'm just going to give it a little bit of tuck like this, probably not too much, but I'm just going to try to follow the canvas over here like this. Now actually, let's see if I can find the picture. I think this might be a good one. Okay, so if you look at this, you will see that there's a little bit of tuck. Well, I think well, maybe the wheels are turning, so it's kind of hard to see. So let me see if I can find a different picture. Let's see. I think this might be a bit of a better example. Okay, so as you can see over here, usually the wheels are located flat, but as you can see, the wheel flat is a little bit slanted towards the bottom. So it tucks in a little bit like this. Part of the reason for this is because of the criteria that we have to meet, and also it gives I think it gives a little bit more shape. So I think that looks good, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the stretch tool to actually tuck this in a little bit. Looks like it is a little bit of an angle, so I think that looks good, and I might pull this out just a little bit like that. Okay, so I think that looks pretty good, and now I think we can start projecting. Now for this one, I'm going to first of all set up a wheel over here. So let's do that first. So I'm going to use not the circle tool, but I'm going to use the key point curve box. Okay, so I'm just going to press circle, and I'm going to point it somewhere here like this, and I'm just going to I'm just going to try to follow the size of the wheel, and it looks like it probably needs to go down a little bit too. So what I'm going to do is, well, actually, I'm going to just scale it up, and I'm going to make sure that this is at least touching, if not going beyond the ground plane. And I think that looks pretty good. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make sure that this is at the center like this. I think that looks good. I know the CV structure is pointing this way, so I might just point it down. But well, for this one, because it's not circular, you don't really need to worry about this. Okay, so I think that looks pretty good. And now let's go ahead and make some curves for the outside line. Now, the only thing though is, well, because the canvas is a little bit low resolution, what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to reference this as well as, well, reference the canvas as well as the picture. So I'm going to try to use these in combination in order to create the wheel flat. Okay, so I think this is probably a better view. Maybe this one. I think they're the same. But I'll use this as a reference. So it looks like it is a little bit circular on the top, but it looks like it is a little bit flat here, and looks like it's a little bit flat here as well. So what I'm going to do is I am going to see if I can do a fit curve on this curve over here. So I'm just going to, do a fit curve like this. And somewhere over here, it looks like 2 degrees is not going to cut it. So I'm going to say 3. Well, actually, you know what? This might not be a good idea. Okay, so I'm just going to see, because right now this is based on the character line. So maybe I should strike the line first. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to strike a curve from here to here. Just roughly, it doesn't have to be exact, but I'm going to try to match it somewhat so that we have some reference point like that. And I might, because right now this is going to determine where it's going to end, so there's probably a chance that it might not be matching exactly. I think that's, well, I think that looks pretty good. I'm gonna point this up a little bit. Yeah, I think that looks pretty good. Okay, so now that's going to determine where this circle goes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first of all copy and paste this curve over here, and I'm going to scale it up a little bit. Because it is somewhat circular, I'm going to use this as a base, and I think that looks good. And I'm just going to extend over here, and I'm going to extend over here. Oh, that's not working. I'm going to extend over here like this. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a fit curve on this so that it's a little bit easier to manipulate. Okay, so I think that looks good. Degree 3 should be fine. Actually, let's see if I can do a degree 2. So I'm going to say fit curve here. Degree 2 might not work. Okay, so degree 3 it is. That looks good, and I'm going to delete the circle. And as you can see over here, it's pointing out a little bit. So I'm going to actually point this one out just a little bit like this, and I'm going to follow this circle over this line over here, and same thing over here. I'm going to point it out like that, just a hair, so that we can give it a little bit of shape. So it looks like orthographic drawing, the blueprint is a little bit off, but that's okay. Okay, so that is good. I know it's located over here, but we're going to fit it anyways. So that, I don't think you guys need to worry about that just yet. Okay, so the shape looks good over there, and I'm going to just strike a curve over here. And it looks like it's ending right here. So I would say that's, well, I would say that's pretty good. I'm going to use the stretch tool to raise it up a little bit. And I'm going to shape this a little bit. Okay, so as you can see over here, it's very close to the tire over here, but it's a little bit farther outboard over here. So I'm just going to give it a little shape, but being mindful of the relationship between the wheel or the tire and the wheel flat. Okay, so I think that looks good, and let's strike a line for this one like that and give it a little bit of crown. Think this one, maybe I'll just push the lower just a little bit. I think that looks good. And let's go ahead and do the same thing for the front. I know it looks a little bit round over here, but I don't think that is a case. I think I should make it just a little bit flatter than what you can see in the canvas. Okay, so I think that's pretty good. Again, same thing over here. Just going to point it this way and give it a little bit of crown, and I think we are good over here. Okay, so now let's go ahead and do an offset. Okay, so I'm just going to offset this well, we don't exactly have a reference for this, so I'm going to just base it off on the picture. So let's see if I can do that. So looks like it's maybe. Well, actually, for this one, I'm just going to do an NUV like this, and I might just shrink it just a little bit, but we'll have to see. So I think for this one, I think I have a better picture for the side view. So let me just grab this. Okay, so well, I think the thickness. Well, I think I need to shrink this a little bit so that it's easier to say. Actually, we can just do this. Well, I might make it just a little bit thicker. So instead of -23, maybe I'll do 25, something like that. Yeah, I think that looks pretty good. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and use the extend tool to snap it over here, and I'm going to do the same thing over here and snap it over here. Now the only so right now, well, basically the wheel flat has to match. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy paste over here. I think that's good, and I'm going to do the same thing over here. I'm just going to copy paste this curve over here. Okay, so it looks like we are barely inside the surface. So well, that is actually not too bad, but let's give ourselves a little bit of room. So I'm just going to do a center pivot, and I'm going to scale it just a little bit like that, and I'm going to paste it over here. And for this one, I'm just going to make sure that it's parallel so that it's symmetrical about this side. Okay, so that is done. However, actually, I might. Looks like it is not exactly on the line. If you see this point and this point is a little bit different, I think they did that, to make this a little bit more parallel. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to base it off on the outside, and I'm going to, well, in order to do this, I'm going to extend this just a little bit so that it's a little bit, it's closer, and I'm going to offset this 25 this way. And that's going to allow us to have a same thickness, but I don't think that's quite right. So I'm just going to make it similar, but not exactly the same. So the inboard side, the inboard edge of the wheel flat is going to be a little bit lower. And well, the front side actually doesn't look too bad, but and I think it's somewhat parallel, but I think it's you could use a little bit of help too. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to push this a little bit over here, and I'm going to extend this one over here like that, and I think that looks good. Okay, so since I did move this over here, I'm going to move all the curves at the bottom as well, and there we have it. Okay, so as far as the shape goes, I don't think it's too bad. However, looks like this one, I'm going to bring this edge a little bit inboard. So I'm going to grab all the CVs like this. I'm just going to push it a little bit, and this one over here, I might push that out just a hair. And I think the rest of the proportion looks pretty good. Okay, so now let's go ahead and project this. We already have a surface, so I'm just going to project these two curves like that. And I'm going to actually do the same thing for these as well. And these ones, like that. Okay, so now all we have to do is just do a fit curve. This process is very similar to the other projects that I've done. So this should be pretty straightforward if you guys have done this before with me. This one I'm going to leave it at degree 3, but the rest of them I'm going to make sure that it's degree 2. I know there's a little bit of deviation, but that's okay. So I'm just going to do this, and we are ready for the wheel flat. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with the shape. So these curves, I'm just going to hide them over here like this, and I'm going to say wheel flat. This surface, I'm going to move that as well. Oh, okay, so that's not good. So I'm just going to make sure that it is like that so that we can get rid of this span over here. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with that. I'm going to just turn that off, and I'm going to move this one as well, including the surface. And these curves over here, I'm going to delete the construction history like that. Okay, so now we have this set up. I'm just going to use, well, actually, I'm going to use a skin. The skin and freeform blend is a little bit different, despite basically doing the same thing. So with the freeform blend, of course, you can set the continue to G2 or even G3, but if you just use it as position, basically it's a skin. However, how it matches the parameterization of the curves is a little bit different. So whenever I do a wheel flat, I actually prefer to use skin because it tends to, if the curves are of similar characteristics, such as this one, I think it tends to match it a little bit better. So I'm going to do that, and I'm going to give it a little bit of crown. So proportion crown. And I'm going to say probably 0.05 should be good. I'm going to do the same thing over here. And I'm going to do the same thing over here. Now, this one is probably going to stay the same, but these ones over here, there's a good chance that I might have to shift it. Because especially over here, you'll see that there's a crease over here, but as it goes down, it becomes flat. So I probably have to be aware of that. And same thing over here. You'll see that the bottom edge tends to have a one flat curve. So I'm going to leave it like that. Okay. Pretty happy with the shape. We got a little bit of crown here. We got a little bit of shape there. So I am pretty happy with that. Okay. So maybe I should have given it a little bit of crown this way, but I think it's pretty flat, so maybe I'll just leave it like that. Yeah, it looks pretty flat, so I'll just leave it like that, and if I need to, we can always modify it later. All right, so now let's move on to the back. So actually, before, yeah, I think that looks pretty good. So let's work on the one on the rear. Okay, so it looks like this one has a little bit different shape, similar but slightly different. So I think we need to pay attention to how it looks. Let me just bring up a picture over here. So you'll notice that, yeah, there's a little bit more angle. I think this is a little bit flatter, and it's also a little bit different here. Although, because the shapes are similar, I think we can use somewhat the same curves. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab all of this, and I'm going to say copy and paste like this, and I'm just going to bring it to the rear like that. Okay, so let's see. I am going to delete that, and first of all, let me just place all this so that it's at the center. And of course, the rear wheel is a little bigger. So I'm just going to go ahead and scale this up, but I'm going to make sure that this is lined up. Now it is not super critical, but I prefer to keep it that way. I'm just going to make sure that the wheel is not floating and it's at least touching somewhat over here. Okay, so I think our surface needs to be a little bit bigger. So I'm just going to put this pivot here, and I'm going to scale it like that. I'm going to move it up just a hair. This. Excuse me. And I'm just going to create a rail like this. And let's go ahead and grab all these curves. And I'm just going to do a center pivot here. And I'm going to scale these up as well. Okay, so I think, well, the basic shape is not too bad. All right, so that looks pretty good. And let's go ahead and check the picture. Okay, so looks like it's a little bit thicker. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to scale this up just a little bit like this. And I'm going to make sure that it ends somewhere. Oh, okay. So it looks like this one looks like the edge is, well, actually, I'm not quite sure. I think this one ends here, but I don't think this edge or this theoretical over here exactly follows the cut line. So, although I think it might be easier to do it that way. Okay, so what I'm going to do, oh, actually, I think it looks a little bit flat over here as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to actually delete that. And I'm going to point this one down just a little bit. And I'm actually going to, well, actually a little bit more. And I'm just going to move it up just a hair. I think that looks pretty good. And I also think that it should end somewhere over here, the inside edge. And that looks pretty good over there. Maybe I'll just, I think I'm just going to move the pivot here and do a non-proportional scale with the right mouse button so that it just moves up and down. Okay, so I think the proportion is a little bit better. And I'm just going to extend this one a little bit here. And I'm going to do an offset. Okay, point it the other way. Actually, I'm just going to do that like this. And looks like it's a little bit thicker than the front one. So I would say that's pretty good. I'm going to make it even 32. And now let's go ahead and do this one. Just going to use the stretch tool like this. Actually, you know what? Let's snap it over here, do a little bit of rotation like that. And I'm just going to scale it over here. And I might pop this one out just a little bit. Now, I don't think the orthographic, the blueprint, orthographic drawing or canvas or whatever you guys want to call it, is a little bit inaccurate, I think, compared to the picture. So, but the picture is a real thing, so I'm going to try to follow that. Okay, so I think it looks good over here. Did I copy? I don't think I copied that over here. So I'm just going to copy and paste it over here. I'm just going to make sure that it is located where it needs to be. I'm just going to scale it like this. And I'm going to use the stretch tool. Oh, before we continue any further, I'm going to make sure that this is located where it should be. So right now it's, yeah, I think that's, that looks good. Okay. And now I'm going to, the inside looks good. And let's go ahead and do this one. So this one also, I'm going to just move the pivot here. And this one I'm actually going to delete. And for this one, looks like it's ending about here. So let's go ahead and do an extend. Actually, I'm going to try and see if I can find a different rear view. Oh, not a rear view, different side view. Maybe that shows this a little bit better. There's a little perspective, so it's kind of hard to determine if it's supposed to be just one line or if it's supposed to bend. I would think that it's probably one shape, but I'm not sure. So let's go ahead and I'm going to try to find a side view, which hopefully shows this better. Yeah, I think there's a little bit of angle. So I'm probably just going to break it up right here and just crank it in. Okay. So if that's the case, I'm just going to use this curve over here and I'm going to give it a little crown. And I think I can pull this one out a little bit, because right now there, yes, there is a little bit of taper towards the bottom, but I don't think it's this much. I think what I have is a little bit severe, so I'm just going to pull that out a little bit. And I think this location of this also has to change a little bit. So as you can see over here, the peak is actually located below this feature line and right here. But right now mine is located over here, which I don't think is correct. So I'm just going to pull this one a little bit. Well, the feature line goes here, and so it's probably there is good. And I'm just going to use the stretch tool like that to make sure that looks good. Okay, so I'm going to give it a little bit of puff in the middle, and I'm going to use the stretch tool to move it a little bit, and this one like that. Now I don't think, yeah, I think that looks much better, and I might just pull it out just a little bit like that, and I'll snap it here. All right, so a little bit better than before. I think I want to make sure that this relationship between the tire and the wheel flat, or that looks so that it looks good. Okay, so I think that's good, and I'm going to go ahead and project. So this one I can probably get rid of like that. Now let's actually go back to this picture. Okay, so for this one, the thickness probably isn't too relevant. I think for this one, the edge starts to disappear over somewhere over here, and just a one clean curve over here. And this one, because of the feature inside of this, I think it also needs to be sort of dissolved into the main surface, but it looks like it continues at least probably down here, because there's a peak over here that is quite visible. So let's go ahead and try to do this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to offset the same amount. So it looks like I offset at 32, and I'm going to see if that'll work. So I'm just going to offset it at 32 like this, and I'm going to see where it crosses with the other line. I think that looks pretty good. And I'm going to do the same thing over here like this. And well, actually, yeah, I think that looks pretty good. It's where the feature line is. I know it's a little bit lower here and a little bit higher there, but overall I don't think it's too bad. Okay, so the thickness is the same. I'm pretty happy with that. So now let's go ahead and project all the curves like this, and this one over here. And this will act as a basis for the wheel flats. I know the shape is a little bit different here, so I'm quite certain that I probably have to adjust it. But for now, we can use this as a base off of just one single clean sheet. So that'll be good for us. Okay, so before we continue, I'm just going to make sure that the angle of the wheel flat, or the wheel flat base surface, is good. So I'm just going to put that there, and I'm going to hide all those. And these ones, I'm going to put it over here. These ones I'm going to hide for a second. And I'm going to turn rear on and front off, so that it's easier to see. Okay, so I think it doesn't look too bad. However, for the rear one, I think I might want to give it just a little puff, because I think the front one is a little bit too flat. Just a little bit. And I think that looks good. Okay. And I just want to make sure that it looks good from the top view. Actually, this is probably due to the location of the canvas image, but I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to crank it out just a little bit. Actually, I'm going to grab the middle CV2 so that we retain some of the volume. I know it's not exactly matching on the top, but I think it should be okay. And let's go ahead and do a fit curve. So I want to make sure that I match the shape. So for the top ones, I'm going to say degree 3. And for the ones towards the lower, I'm going to make sure that they're degree 2. Okay, so those are done. I'm going to assign them over here. And actually, let's see. Okay, so these ones, well, actually the top one, I'm going to delete the curves. This one, I'm going to keep it for now because I probably have to adjust them. This one, I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing, just skin, and I do have a little bit of crown, like this and like this. For now, of course, these curves I can delete, and we got our wheel flat. Okay, so of course, much more to do, but I think this is a pretty good start. And wheel flat is one of the most important surfaces to create. So I'm pretty happy with what we have so far. Okay, so that is it for part 2. We'll continue in the next tutorial, and thank you guys for watching.